Capability Association, the first Human Development and Capability Association South Asia Regional Network program. So this is a keynote session on exploring the intersection of race, social origin, and ethnicity that give rise to the level of socialism and political conflict. This session, as all of you know, is being chaired by Professor Jeffrey Whitsoe, who is an associate professor of anthropology from Union College, New York. Professor Whitsoe has done research focusing on critical rethinking of democracy and the post-colonial state through an examination of lower caste politics in Bihar, which most of the audience might know, a populous state in northern India where he has been engaged in ethnographic research since the year 2000. He is the author of the book Democracy Against Development, which has been published by Chicago Press. And he has also authored several articles and book chapters on lower caste politics in India. His current research explores the political economy of rural development with a focus on India's massive rural employment guarantee scheme. Another project which he is involved examines the way in which neoliberal economic growth is reshaping regional politics, which has a focus on criminal networks related to natural resource extraction. I warmly welcome Professor Jeffrey Whitsoe to this session, and I also immensely thankful to him for accepting to be the chair of this session with a very short notice. Over to you, Professor Jeffrey Whitsoe.
Thank you, Professor Hippo. It's great to be here. And I think an interesting topic, and I'm very, I'm excited to hear what our eminent speakers remarks on this, but I'm just going to open with a few brief kind of thoughts and questions on the topic, right? Exploring the intersection of race, social origin, and ethnicity that gives rise to a level of social and political conflict. If we're thinking, I think with India, because my entire work has been focused in Bihar, and so when you think of race, there's a whole discussion in and of itself, but race and caste. Now, when I think of race, the first thing I think of is that race is basically a colonial product, a colonial concept, a concept produced by colonialism. And so I think colonial history is quite important and needs to be taken into account in this conversation. And so, for instance, in India, what today we term caste was definitely racialized and shaped in various ways through colonial racial ideologies and practices, but also shaped in Bihar by institutions like the permanent settlement that link caste to a colonial economic order. Right, this gave rise to a social order that, like most social orders, was inherently violent. And so within a context like this, how do we define and understand the word conflict? And what exactly is the difference between conflict and violence? So as you mentioned, my first research in India was in Bihar, was way back in 2000. And it was the Panchayat elections, actually. It was the Bihar Panchayat elections in 2000. It was my first ethnographic experience of the world's largest democracy. I saw a lot. I saw 6 different, I basically was in 6 different villages for the 6 different phases of the election. And one thing that I observed during those 6 elections was the difference between what people, and I want to use this to kind of just frame this question of what exactly is conflict and how do we want to theorize and think about it. 2 different types of what was known as booth looting, right? Particularly in 2000, particularly Panchayat elections in Bihar were quite contentious, and there was always quite a lot of violence surrounding the elections. But I noticed 2 very different types of booth looting. And people would use that term. There was one type of booth looting that people would refer to as silent booth looting. Silent booth looting or booth capturing, silent booth capturing would be where there's no violence, there's no conflict, but the dominant caste the landlord caste in a particular village would have just completely controlled the voting process to such an extent that there wasn't really voting. There wasn't really voting, right? But no conflict. There was another election. This is in Muzaffarpur, actually, which is this side of my current research right now, which that one was incredibly contentious. It involved armed gundas. Several different candidates had armed kind of gunmen. A booth I was observing was attacked with machine gun fire, with AKs, and with bombs being thrown and all of this. But particularly analyzing it all afterwards, at least in that one, there was competition. And no one knew for sure which candidate would win. And the fact that say the Bhumihar landlords in that village had to use gunmen, the Yadav candidate also had gunmen present during the election, showed there was a level of kind of competition and that it could have gone in different directions. And so, it's in silent booth capturing, which one was the more violence present? With silent booth capturing, people didn't have a vote. Their right to vote was completely violated. In the second one, where there was open conflict and even gunfights and stuff, it wasn't like a model election, obviously, but you can argue that the democratic rights were being exercised at least a bit. And so, this kind of makes me think back on everything I've observed over the last more than 20 years now, working in Bihar, and just the kind of conflict that I saw, the everyday conflict, particularly in the early 2000s, during kind of the end of the period when the Lalu Yadav period in Bihar. Yeah, there was endemic conflict. I mean, even in the village, and it was social and political. Elections were violent, like I just described, but also everyday life. There was a lot of tensions in the village I was living in. This was in Bhojpur district. Even things like village festivals and even cricket, like the kind of conflict, the political conflict had penetrated like deep down into everyday life. Even in tolas, individual tolas, there was this kind of conflict. But I look back now after 20 years and, I can see the ways in which this period of conflict did lead to an incomplete but vastly increased sense of dignity, voice, and freedom for millions of OBCs and Dalits in Bihar. So even though the Lalu Yadav period was quite unruly, people described it as a breakdown of law and order, a collapse of governance and all this, there were profoundly positive effects as well. And any Dalit or OBC, particularly a person older who remembers all this, will agree with this in Bihar, particularly in rural Bihar. And so this raises the question of whether, given that the status quo is inherently violent, it's, just in everyday life, whether certain types of social and political conflict are actually indicative of processes of empowerment. If that is the case, then our task should not be to understand the factors that give rise to conflict in order to prevent conflict, but rather to analytically differentiate types of conflict that accompanies empowerment from forms of conflict that disempower oppressed peoples. Just to give an example from the United States, I'm in New York right now. The kind of unrest and even looting that accompanied the Black Lives Matter movement last summer, I think is very different and needs to be, it's qualitatively different and needs to be analytically differentiated from the types of conflict endemic to everyday life in the American ghetto, including the police brutality that inspired the movement. And so I guess my central question is, what type of framework is needed in order to analytically differentiate productive from oppressive forms of conflict? So with this, I'll turn it over to our eminent speaker, who is no stranger to conflict, I think of the productive type. and has written extensively and passionately about Dalit Bahujan politics, political Buddhism, land reform, and many other topics that are very relevant to this conversation. So I'm very much looking forward to hearing what Sri K Ilaiah CAPABILITY has to say.
Thank you very much, and I'm glad that you have briefly examined how the birth-based inequalities, which happen to be caste in India, create conflicts even at the time of election. Now, talking about the broad topic of race, birth-based discrimination leading to social conflicts in South Asian context, I think one of the key areas in South Asia, largely in India and Sri Lanka to some extent, Nepal, and what is happening in Myanmar and Bhutan, and yes, Afghanistan is part of the whole South Asian situation in a way. Now, one of the problems of South Asia historically is that in ancient times, different waves of migrations of different races took place to this region. Now, as many migration theorists and anthropologists have suggested, that the first ever migrants were the out of Africa migration. And if you take India, look at the earliest Harappan civilization, the out of African migration and the Asian migration, much before the Aryan migration, and also the Mongoloid Eastern migration took place to India, created a mixed up population in India. Now, that is where largely the Dalit, backward class, what we largely describe as historical Shudras, happen to be the Dravidian race and related to the question of color. Later on, of course, by 15th century BCE, the Aryan migration from Central Asia, maybe part of from German base happened. And there are 4 races in India today. If you look at the racial configuration, by and large, Dravidians and Aryans, and in the eastern part of India, the Mongoloid racial groups. And then we have the Pathans, the Mughals who have migrated during the Muslim period. Now, therefore, this racial complexion of India has also certain features within Nepal, and also certain features in Sri Lanka. Now, what happened with this racial background? So take, for example, India, there is a sharp conflict that was created by the ruling Hindutva right-wing force around the animal of cow. it is not because cow is just a food animal, but cow is a white animal, and they do not respect or treat buffalo, which is a black animal, as a sacred animal at all. So that is a racial ideological discrimination within the animal kingdom by the Aryan forces through their literature, through their ideology, and this was extended to human beings, and thereby the Indian, even the Nepalese, to some extent Sri Lankan population was divided into 4 caste groups, what they call varnas in Sanskrit language. The Shudras, the largest productive agrarian artisanal masses, the Vaishyas, who were the business community, the present ruling dispensation has quite a lot of Vaishyas, and the largest industrial force. And the Kshatriyas, the rulers, classical rulers, and the Brahmins, which is the main force that controls RSS and BJP historically. Now, this caste race composition, both in India and Nepal, and also Sri Lanka, has led to massive social conflicts over a period of time, and a massive oppression of the color-wise black Dravidian, Shudra, Dalit masses, and color-wise reddish Aryan, Brahmin, and other forces. Now, this did not end. Actually, it is not the colonials who created this, but it was a historical legacy of human superior and inferior color theories, superior and inferior work ethics, and the anti-dignity of labor theory of Brahmanism in India led to massive conflicts in Indian history. Even the Muslims did not arrive here, even the British did not arrive here, even before the colonial period. But there was not much writing. Now, some of us are trying to look back and then see from Harappan city civilization building to present what kind of conflicts the racial and caste varna factor created here. Now, even now, how this has this continues to create huge psychological, educational, employment opportunity issues, and also created massive man-woman inequalities with very oppressive and controlling patriarchal politics within the race and birth-based inequalities. Added to this, this region became the central region where, starting from the 7th century onwards, the Muslim Islamic expansion took place. And it is because of the caste and because of human untouchability, Islam with one book and one God idea could easily spread to the subcontinent and the present Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bangladesh, even Indonesia got into the Muslim religion. The Aryans who contested the expansion of Islam, particularly the Brahmins, but they could not succeed because they have divided the society much more deeply, where the resistance was very less, and the Islamic spiritual expansion and later even the military expansion happened. Now it is this again allowed the British colonials to occupy the land very easily because of that division. And with the Muslims settling Islam here, and a lot of people getting converted into Islam, leaving the idol worship and the Brahminic oppressive zones, there were lots of communal conflicts. India and even Afghanistan, Pakistan was the central region where a lot of this religious conversion conflicts took place. And you know, the two agendas that the present BJP deployed on the entire Indian nation and then created a lot of violence and conflicts. One is the beef issue, which is not a Muslim question. But beef is a Dalit food. Beef is Indian tribal food. Tribals, Indian tribes, by and large, are Indo-Africans. And we all share Indo-African blood more than the Indo-Aryan blood. Beef is historically food of all human beings, but the Aryanism created anti-beef culture, and then a lot of violence in India happened around that. And many communal riots around beef question took place. Then two other issues now are very serious, both legally, socially, politically, and economically. One is the Ghar Wapsi program. That is, those who got converted into Islam and Christianity, they said should come back. And it was not a voluntary program, but a very serious political program. And since there were castes within Hindu religion, the caste got weakened after they entered into Christianity and Islam. Though there is this Catholic, there is Protestant denominational location, but in Muslims also there is Shia and Sunni issue. And around the comeback program, Ghar Wapsi, come back home. Now, they said you come back home, but there is no home here in Hinduism. Because those who have gone into Islam, into which caste they should come back. Some of them have forgotten given up their caste identity within Islam or Christianity. So where should they come back? Because Hinduism still is a caste hierarchically divided society, as Mahatma Phule, Ambedkar, and my own writings show now. The second one is love jihad. And they are putting a lot of laws around the issue of love jihad. They're saying both the center and many state governments where BJP, RSS are ruling, they're saying that any love happening between a so-called Hindu and a Muslim is a forceful taking away of Hindu girls and boys into Islam for conversion. And there are a number of problems and huge conflicts about issues. And there are genuine law issues, though our Supreme Court and High Courts are trying to tell that after all, you can't stop young people loving each other, cutting across religions, cutting across castes, cutting across economic classes. And not only this, love jihad did not confine to Hindu-Muslim problem. Huge honor killing of Dalits and lower OBCs who entered into intercaste marriages were killed by their own family members. Number of girls. This, they say, that caste controls marriage system. But the modern education and the modern market, the globalized market, the globalized social interaction in schools, colleges, in malls, in restaurants, are allowing untouchable Dalit girls to interact with the Brahmins, the Banyas, the Shudras, and they get attracted to each other. And the higher castes do not tolerate intercaste marriage in India. It's a massive problem of honor killing of brilliant girls, more so girls. The first generation educated Dalit girls, backward class girls, when they get into the idea of choice through the means of love, there was just killing, hanging in public. This was happening through the means of what they call honor killing. Now, it is horrendous. I mean, this is not only confined to India. In Nepal, this happens. In Sri Lanka, this happens. And the Sri Lankan Tamil and Sri Lankan native Malay people, Sri Lankan people, a huge terrorism problem arose there. We know what kind of violence took place. And within the Islamic domain of this area, the conversion into Islam did not stop the violence within. Social scientists did not examine this, why there is more violent Islam in Afghanistan, in Pakistan, in relatively Bangladesh, because of its caste and different racial roots. Afghanistan originally was known as a Aryan land, but there were other races, tribes that have come there, and all of them have become Muslims, but there are tribal and racial differences within the Muslim communities. So the violence got carried into the majority Islamic states also, and that is part of the race question only. Now, there is this mistaken understanding of the Indian social scientists, even the American, European social scientists who study, all this was created by colonialism. No. In fact, colonialism, by introducing English into all these regions and given a modernization process, there is absolute nonsensical theory that Brahmins of India constructed, that there is Sanskritization process here and the colonialism, destroyed India by introducing English, what they call Macaulay school of thought has destroyed. No, it is wrong. It is the same Brahmins who gave up their Sanskrit, who never allowed us to learn Sanskrit and learned English. And most of them, once they get high-end degrees, they go and settle down in America, Europe, Australia, Canada, from Bengal, from Maharashtra, and from Tamil Nadu. Majority of them are Brahmins, Kayasthas, Khatris, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas. The richest established English medium colleges, universities, they use the Christian missionary in English education, and then now are settling down in those countries. They don't want to us to learn English, because they think if we learn English, we'll also compete with them. So caste is a very destructive agenda for issue for 4,000 years in subcontinent. It has racial structure. We took it to UN Durban conference, but United Nations did not accept it. At that time also there was this BJP Vajpayee government, and they did not treat caste on par with racial question in US and in South Africa. But it is a global problem. The world must realize if 250 million Dalits remain untouchables historically, leather technologies and artisanal forces, and the Shudra OBCs who have been the productive mass, and the Brahmin, Banya, Kayastha, Khatri, these Dvijas, what we call the who are around the RSS, BJP, and high-end Congress offices. They don't want us to learn modern education. So how do we are about now to take for example the farmers' struggle in India. The farmers' issue is a caste issue. There are no Brahmins in farmer community. There are no Banyas, the Reliance, the Ambani, Adani's, Vedanti group, or the Bharati company, whatever high-end industrial companies, their communities are not in agriculture. The agriculture is a Shudra working domain, production, cattle economy. And the ruling dispensation doesn't care about their welfare because it's a caste problem. So given this complexity, the issue, the caste that emerged out of race issue in ancient subcontinental domain, which was like the race in America in the 16th, 17th centuries, immigration of or slave trade of Africans. People migrated on their own here, settled down because of the tropical economy and good agriculture, river beds. So created caste problem. And producers are treated with indignity, no religious right. Even now, Dalits, Shudras, whatever they are, Chars, Gujars, Patels, Yadavs, they don't have the right to become priests in Hinduism. And they can't read Sanskrit in their Gurukulas. Now they are saying we should not learn English. BJP wants to make even central universities Hindi teaching universities. But private universities like Ashoka, Amity, OP Jindal, even Reliance is starting huge private university. There they want to teach high-end Anglican systems there, the British American model. So we are in a very bad situation, and UN did not show any interest in studying our fate in this land, and the global serious study of the racial roots of caste This whole false theory that the Brahminic intellectuals spread, that caste is a creation of colonialism and race is a creation of colonialism. No, India is the greatest and best example that race got converted into caste. Caste was taken to the logical end of human untouchability. And patriarchy was deeply penetrated into the caste and race issue. Therefore, women's menstrual untouchability. Look at the temple issue in Kerala. So before 50, women should not go into a temple. And there is this Muslim population also. For them, 40 days after delivery, they should not read Quran, they should not do namaz, and 7 days after. You see, all this is a problem. So I think the world has to debate. In the minority, with the minority issue, we don't want to hide the non-reformed structure of Muslims there. They have huge Shia-Sunni problem. The Shias are in minority, they are cooperating with RSS, BJP. The Sunnis are majority, so there is this whole maltreatment. So all this made India, at the same time, we don't want to give up democracy because the West does not understand it is the Dalits, Shudras, Adivasis who preserved democracy because the constitution was written by a great Dalit, Ambedkar. And Gandhi and Nehru helped us, no doubt. But otherwise, the upper caste would not have liked democracy in India. They were all through anti-democratic. So, but we needed democracy because, and we also did not want communist revolution here because the Communist Party is a centralized Brahmin-aided parties. So they will impose, in the name of proletariat dictatorship, the Brahmin dictatorship again, if it goes to communism. Therefore, those of us who worked with them, with the radical communists also studied Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, realized that given the caste, the communist revolution should not be allowed here. We have to transform through only democratic means because the right to individual vote has been giving us many rights. The right to reservation is a right to education issue, right to employment issue, right to man-woman equality in the modern capitalist market issue. We are overcoming the feudal processes. But the left opposed globalization. But globalization today is teaching through market English to illiterates. We want that. Ordinary illiterates know 300 English words: salt, rice, food, phone, train. Every illiterate tribal also knows English words, and who were in the small language groups without communication outside, through these market English words, they can go anywhere and live for some time. So our education system is dampened. They want regional language to lower caste, English to upper caste. So we are demanding English medium in government schools all across the nation, and one regional language in every class. So I think the Western scholars, I request my chairperson Jaffrey Whitcoast, don't take theories from Brahmin scholars, please. They misled all India. They are in Columbia, they are in Harvard, they are having some Nobel Prizes there, but they don't reflect India in their studies. So study Ambedkar, study our scholars. Our young people are writing beautiful books. And we have just written a very wonderful book called Shudra's Vision for a New Path. This is by Penguin. You all order this. It gives a new direction to the caste problem, to the education problem, to the RSS BJP kind of ideology from a Shudra position. And I edited the book with 10 young scholars. Please read Ambedkar, read the young scholars writing very well now, but they don't want us to write in English. And we will dedicate ourselves to write. Don't follow even the Harvard, Oxford, Cambridge Brahmin scholars. Even they are secular. They are so-called democratic. But they are not supporting us for caste census now. What is Amartya Sen doing? What is Abhijit Banerjee doing there? Why caste census are bad? How caste census will create caste in India? They will only tell what is the percentage of each caste and what is their social status. And the British used to think by 1881 that Brahmins are majority in Hindu society because they were interacting only with Brahmins. Whether it is Persian language, whether it is English or earlier Sanskrit, even the German Sanskrit people interacted only with Brahmins. But when they took the census, they realized that Brahmins were just 4.2% in India and controlling every system. And they were interlocutor to the British administration. They misled them. And that is where luckily Mahatma Phule, Ambedkar, Periyar, they wrote, at least in regional languages, Ambedkar saved us by writing in English. And please read our books. We want the outsiders to help us democratically change. We are not for civil war. They want to push us into civil war. You read my book, Post-Hindu India. There is a chapter on civil war, how they want to push us into civil war by this oppression. But we want the constitution to be safe. BJP wants to intervene, change the constitution quite substantially, but we are fighting. No, Ambedkar gave us this great constitution with liberty, equality, fraternity, and social justice. So I request the Western scholars read the Dalit, OBC, Shudra scholars. Now a lot of literature is coming out, which is entirely different from what the Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard, Columbia educated Brahmin or Baniya or Dvija intellectuals. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lots of very interesting points. Should I just now give some response and then maybe we can have a bit of a discussion? I agree with a lot of what you say, particularly English education, the importance of Ambedkar as a thinker, obviously. I do think it's important to really understand. I want to go back to the central question of race, caste, colonialism. Because my position is a little more nuanced, I think, than your remarks indicated. I would even argue that the fact that there's so many Brahmin professors at places like Harvard and Columbia is itself a legacy of colonialism. And we see this all over the world. Colonial collaborators end up being the elite, right? And now a global elite. So this is part of the same story. I think we need to take colonial history seriously. And I'm not saying at all that caste is created by colonialism. It was shaped by colonialism, like elevating Brahmins in many cases to positions they didn't necessarily have before in some places. In my village is a great example. In Bhojpur, I could tell that story. But race as a notion, as a concept, is a colonial creation. If you go back 4 or 5 centuries, there's no concept like race the way we use it today. It just didn't exist. And it was created to justify the slave trade and colonial plantation economy. That shaped caste. Caste obviously predated it. And so to me, this whole debate on, you know, on whether caste and race should be on par, you know, caste discrimination is in some ways more intense than racial discrimination. They're different, but it's not any less. In some ways, it's even more. And so it should be absolutely included, you know, in the UN framework. I agree with you completely on that as well.
Yeah,
but
I just make one point. You know, many Euro-American anthropologists and sociologists did not carefully study the idea of racial discrimination and control that was first established in India in the book of Rig Veda. In Rig Veda, when they divided the society into 4 varnas, varna is not caste, varna is color. So the pure Middle Easterns who just migrated from one area, because migrations take place for a longer time. By the time the people, one race started to reach another point, sometimes it was years and years and racial mixation takes place. The pure white or reddish claim themselves as Brahmin, that is pure whitish race, varna. Brahmin is a varna. Then they call the next, maybe mixed colored people with better physical strength because of the hybridization, because they had sexual relations with all kinds of women on their way. Many migrants did not have their own women or along with them. So people were born and grown, and then the Kshatriya people were stronger physically. Then you have the Vaishya race. The Vaishyas were black and reddish both. The Shudras, by and large, were black. So this was 1500 BC text. Now I'm going by the Brahmin claim itself. If that is so, race as an idea of discrimination was first constructed by the Indian Aryans, not British colonials, nor even the German Aryans. German Aryan racial construction around the World War was much later. We don't know. I don't know, at least German had a, you know, this lady who wrote from Harvard this book, Caste and Racial, Caste and Race, that American lady, who says Germany was the oldest house of caste and race relationship. And then it was India, then America. I don't know. But the Vedic text, Rig Veda, is full of race ideological frame. And we need to carefully examine that. Yeah.
All right, I want to go on another point that you raised, which is the importance of Dalit Bahujan, I guess, movements in preservation, in preserving India's democracy, particularly in this moment. I think where India's democracy is at some risk, maybe a lot of risk. And to me, I've always seen, yeah, I mean, the fact that OBCs and Dalits have been able to gain at least some degree of empowerment through the vote is the reason for the success of India's democracy. Do you think that that is now under attack? It's definitely under attack. Is there a real threat, and what's the way forward in terms of, you know?
See, in the 80s, I have been observing the electoral system ever since I was in school. in 70s and 80s, even in South, there was a lot of Dalit booth capturing and Dalit houses getting burnt. When I was with the civil liberties, we had recorded quite a few booth captures and burning of Dalit houses if they voted against the will of the local landlords and the priest of the temple. But now, because of the Dalit struggles and the OBC consciousness levels, that kind of booth capturing, except in states like Bihar, still is not very much. So it is only influencing the voter, bribing the voter in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, Maharashtra. Every voter will get, by all major party candidates, minimum 1,000 to 1,500 rupees with a liquor bottle for the man. So this is there, but electoral system has by and large fallen in place. And even though India is the largest population voting in every election, even through the modern missions. So democracy in that sense is a desired system by the Dalits and Shudra OBCs. And the tribals are also using their vote more consciously than ever before. Though there were not many conflicts within themselves at that time, but even now. So I would say our democracy is stabilized. Even BJP cannot disturb it. But there is the problem of misusing the democratic processes. Of course, this can happen even in America, what Trump said in the last election, that all election is a bogus. So that can happen, but by and large, we fought through. We have overcome the Babri Masjid, Ayodhya electoral violence periods, the Dalits, Shudra communities asserted. And Muslims also now realized, the only country where we have roughly about 20 crore Muslims. So about 10 crore Muslims vote, even if you take from 18 onwards. So these 10 crore Muslims are very much habituated to vote and election, and through that influence the result. So we are in a positive atmosphere so far as this is concerned, and luckily for us, the Constitution survived for 74 years now, and I don't think they can easily dismantle it like what Pakistanis did, or what Sri Lankans did, or what Myanmar people did, or even Bangladesh did. We are secure. But if we face major wars, maybe with China tomorrow, or if the BJP mishandles the minority question with the whole Muslim world taking a stand against India, I can't say. But right now, we are safeguarding our democracy, and it is the lower caste intelligentsia, whether regional educated or English educated, our focus is safeguarding the Constitution. It is safe, no doubt.
So when I first was doing work in Bihar, I met so many people, lower caste people, who had never even been inside a voting booth until the 90s. And there was this period of real democratization that really did change people's lives. It's pretty dramatic, actually. I mean, just little things like, a laborer is sitting on the side of in the road, and one of a Bhumihar landlord walks by, In the past, you would have to step off the road and bow. Now, no, no. There's a sense of equality in everyday life that I've seen even in my own research over the last 2 decades. That's pretty dramatic. But you know, something else I've observed. I haven't been to India for like 3 years, which it's the longest gap actually of my adult life because of the pandemic. But 3 years ago, when I was in Muzaffarpur, you know, the thing that kind of distraught me was I'd be hanging out with Dalit laborers, right? They're only amongst themselves, and yet nobody could openly criticize Mr. Modi. If anyone criticized Modi, it was a fight. Someone would get up and it would be a fight. And so I couldn't criticize. It was like, I had never seen that. I had never seen that in all my years. You could say what you wanted.
No, that was because, you know, Professor Jaffrey, you know, Modi claimed himself to be an OBC. Having come from RSS background, which they were not allowing earlier. But for a opportunistic way, the RSS, which is headed always by Brahmins, allowed Modi to use his OBC card. Though he doesn't seem to have come from the agrarian Shudra OBC, he has roots in the semi-urban business, Banya kind of caste community. Because in North India, many Banyas took OBC certificate. But take, for example, Sushil Modi in Bihar is a Banya, but he is an OBC, like that. Once he said he is an OBC, those even who did not like him as a Hindutva RSS man thought that we should put an OBC man in power. So that he used very effectively, but you know, slowly it is coming down because he has not done much for Shudra OBCs, and Dalits were never happy because they were never asking for an OBC prime minister as well, because they were gunning for a Dalit prime minister. So this transcends. Now he is taking a posture of, you know, Hindu saint with Dadi and things like that, because he is certainly facing resistance from Brahmins, both within his party and outside. So let us see what happens. But I think they cannot dismantle Indian democratic structure. The resistance will be too big.
Okay, so I mean, I guess in Bihar, certainly until the rise of Modi, the BJP was seen widely as an upper caste and Banya party. That changed dramatically. And to me, in a way, this marked the end of Mandal. And so I guess that's my question: is what's the way forward? What's the way forward?
No, it is not. It is not, because BJP, which started the Mandir movement against Mandal reservation, and it was never speaking pro-reservation language. In fact, all their writings, Ram Madhav, who is their theoretician now, is a Brahmin from Andhra Pradesh, Mohan Bhagwat, and all of them, they extensively use Manu quotations and their gurus, Hegdevar, Golwalkar, and so on, and they oppose reservation even now. But the Shudras, OBCs who voted BJP to power, will not keep quiet. So that is the reason why the Modi government has officially constitutionally recognized the OBC Commission now, which is an anathema to all Brahmins in India. And then he has put 27 OBC ministers in the cabinet, which they were never expecting. And now they thought that if BJP comes to power, reservation will be removed for OBCs at least, if not for Dalits immediately. But that situation changed. Tactfully, they gave 10% to upper caste poor and the OBC reservation, which is not at all an ideology of BJP in 1990, nor it was a Congress ideology. But BJP had to go 2 steps ahead of Congress on OBC reservation issue now, because Modi said, I'm an OBC. I'm a lower OBC, he said, in Bihar and UP. I'm an MBC, he said. So the Mandal is not over. In fact, the Mandir question is they are now building their Mandir, that issue is over. There's nothing for them. And Kashmir issue is over. Muslim triple talaq issue is over. They have only one issue left for creating problem is the common civil code, which Ambedkar himself wanted. Many Shudra Dalit intellectuals may also go on the Ambedkar line, but Mandal is deepening. Mandal has deepened not only reservation, but democracy. And the Shudra OBCs became more conscious. Now they want consistent Shudra OBC Prime Minister. Even Congress cannot now think of seriously bringing only Rahul Gandhi to power.
What do you think of the future of reservations? I mean, one thing that I've seen over the years in Bihar was that, there's been huge change in electoral politics, and in say the Vidhan Sabha has completely changed. But even after all these years of reservations, if you look at institutions like the police, or just the basic development bureaucracy at the block level even, much less institutions like the media or universities, all still basically are upper caste dominated. What do you think the way forward is? Because that created this whole problem. I mean, you can have lower caste political leadership, but if all the other institutions of governance are still controlled.
Yeah, that is a key question that I'm glad you asked. We dealt with that extensively in our Shudra book. See, the Mandal divided the Shudras into 2 camps. For example, Jats, Gujars, Patels, Marathas. And in Bihar, by and large, all Shudras are in OBC category, but not in UP and Bihar, Haryana, Rajasthan, or even South India. Now, in states where the regional parties, Shudra regional parties are ruling, Brahmins are not in a dominant position in anything. But in Santa, they took the help of the unreserved Shudra caste to oppose reservation, like Jats and Patels and Marathas. But they have not got anything in central universities, in ambassador posts, in top-end secretariats of Delhi. And now they have realized. We opposed Mandal thinking that these people treat us as meritorious and give us our own share in the high-end administration. But the Brahmins and Banyas and Kayasthas of Bihar, of Bengal, and the Khatris of Western India, they have become a group within, and they captured central universities, IITs, and ambassadorial positions, governors. So now the Shudras are demanding. In the recent VC selections in central universities, even the Modi government, for the first time, is forced to put an OBC as the higher education minister. And many OBCs are now appointed as central university vice chancellors. Congress was also not doing that, UGC chairman and so on. So in future, if the Shudras, who are now farmers, erstwhile they were kulaks, their feudal economy lost everything, and capitalism has grown from 1991 globalization to now enormously, and centralization of wealth in the hands of monopoly capital and software capital, Brahmins and Banyas. 46% capital is in the hands of Banyas, 42% in the hands of Brahmins. So only 3.8 is in the hands of Shudras, all Shudras, including the regional chief ministers and so on. So they have realized, and English education. The English education issue will put the whole hegemony of the Brahmins, upper caste, upside down. Once our people get English education, they will not allow them even in UPSC, in any service examinations to dominate. Because we are millions in number, the talent will be much, much better, and their anti-production, anti-labor children in the urban areas will not be able to produce the modern pro-production language knowledge that is required. So we are fighting for English medium in all government schools, and not only private or Christian schools. Once that happens, this control of Brahmins in English medium channels, English medium papers, English papers, and in regional areas, papers are under the Shudra control, but they are regional language. So we are aware of that, and we have given a charter in this, how 46% and 90% of the media, daily media, is in the hands of Brahmins, Banyas, Kayasthas, Khatris, who had the thread ceremony, Dvijas. So that now battle will start democratically only. But if the Shudras capture Central University teaching jobs and seats, they never cared. They thought their agriculture, their feudal kulak economy will give them every power. It has not given. They have now realized. So they are opposing within BJP in Congress all Brahmin and Banya leaders. We will see in next 20 years a radical shift.
Interesting. Yeah, no, and I agree that, I mean, one of the distinctive features of caste is the Brahmanical monopoly on educational capital, and which is obviously an old phenomenon. Do you think that Loya made a mistake in terms of opposing English?
Well, Loya,
I mean, that's one reason. That's one reason there's so little English in a place like Bihar. Is it's the legacy of Loya.
You know, we said in this book how Loya, as a Banya socialist with a socialist ideology and caste analysis, he misled the whole North India Shudra OBCs. And even Mulayam Singh, Lalu Prasad were pro-Hindi walas. And they never thought of Hindi medium, English medium in government schools, or at least even the Bengal communists opposed English medium in government schools for 34 years. But now in South, the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister, last year he started, because of our campaign, people are demanding in elections, we want English medium in government schools. So Andhra Pradesh made entire school education English medium, entire. And Telangana made 60% English medium, parallel sections in every high school. So the Telugu medium children are much less in the schools now. And the government school improvement in Andhra Pradesh is world class. They have invested huge money on school infrastructure, and they have printed all their textbooks, 1 page English, 1 page Telugu. All class 1 to 10th books. So child will learn English and Telugu parallelly. But the medium is in the school also from class 1 to 10th and 12th English medium. So that's going to come in Telangana now. And Delhi administration also improved English. And interestingly, Uttar Pradesh government studied Telangana, Andhra Pradesh recently. And they have started from class 1 English courses. So the situation will change if we succeed in making English education issue as issue of election. So Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy promised in his manifesto that he will change the medium of instruction into English. And people voted en bloc. Even the Labour. So that is our target. When we are saying English is Indian, every 5th October, we celebrate Indian English Day. Because that was the day in Calcutta, William Carey and Raja Ram Mohan Roy started an English medium school. So we are spreading this celebration of Indian English Day. We are saying it is English is Indian, no longer a colonial language. We are not like the Brahmin hypocrites. So we will see that it will spread like wildfire within next 10 years.
That would be great. I mean, I guess my worry would be, Iloya's famous formulation of the ruling classes as caste, English, and property. In a state like Bihar, I mean, it would take massive investments because public education, primary education is already so limited. So that's the other argument is that if suddenly everything was English, only a small number of students are actually going to get educated in English, and it could actually have the opposite effect and perpetuate.
No. See, in Telangana, 4 years back, I have been writing repeatedly, addressing small, big, public, local, taluka level intellectual groups to shift into English medium, teacher organizations. So when Telangana government opened parallel English medium schools, sections, in 2006, when the state was united at that. Now, within a year, the number of students who joined in English section were 3 times more than in Telugu sections. And in many schools, after 2 to 3 years, Telugu medium sections were closed. So the rural people want English medium now.
Yeah, I don't doubt that they want it. My question is more, I mean, there's a reason why India has such a hobbled primary education system relative to the wealth of the country, and it's the Brahmanical monopoly on educational capital. And because of this, like in Bihar, schools are barely functioning as is. So if suddenly everything went English, it would mean that most people wouldn't get educated. The civil services then would be it would be impossible for OBCs and Dalits.
No. Bihar and South India, Bihar, UP and South India, at the village level education. See, I have started an English medium school for SC, ST, OBCs in my village in 2002 with the help of an organization. And we have an high school. I studied under the tree, single teacher in the early 60s. Now, when we started an English medium school, when there was a Telugu medium high school, which is a remote village. It was earlier a forest zone when I was a small kid. Now, 80% kids, here they were supposed to pay to start with for LKG 3,000 rupees. 80,000 kids shifted from Telugu to English, 80%. And today, the government school has only 20% village kids, in spite of the fact they give midday meals free, and this school doesn't give. They have to pay at least 10,000 rupees for 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. Yet the flock is here, and they learned excellent English, though the teachers are not very highly English conversant. But we used modern techniques, asking students to use their TV channels, listen TV news and videos, school level videos. They are now everywhere. They compete with high-end English medium convent schools. Some of them are doctors, some of them are good engineers. So speak very good English from village. So what my experiment has shown is, if you educate a child with 2 language formula and within the home environment and with an interaction with the labor work, most of them are agrarian, small farmers, laborers. So they learn high agrarian science and pro-dignity of labor, and they study facing the problems of crisis of house. So they become more confident than those who are put in urban area, in hostels and so on. So my village school proved, it's called Good Shepherd Papaya Pet School, you can just Google it, proved that rural students learn better English now.
Wonderful. No, I don't question that almost every family would want to send their kids to English medium. And I also don't question that they'll learn well if they have a school like your wonderful school. But given that, say, at least 80% of actual education in much of India is happening in private tutoring, right? With the public schools barely functioning often, depending on where you are, I just think it's a daunting task, but I agree that it's an important one. I think it's a good project.
Yeah.
Yeah. So should we open it to if there's any questions?
Let them ask questions.
Yes, please. So there are questions by 3 or 4 questions I can see. So are you able to see the questions on the chat, or shall I read out the questions for you?
Yeah, you read out the questions.
Okay. So questions from Professor J is, thank you for your insights into the history and the current inequalities of caste. However, you seem to understand race as ethnicity. Others disagree, thinking that in race there is something more. Perceived ethnicity is used in a social system to target a group of advantage, for advantage or disadvantage. Could you comment? Do you understand race as ethnicity or as a system of imposing disadvantages?
Yeah, race and ethnicity, the very concept of race and ethnicity, both are different in one sense and they collapse in another sense. Now, for example, there is a tribe called Lambada tribe here, the Banjaras, huge tribe. They are ethnically different from the village folk. In my own village, we have about 40% Lambada tribe. And there is another tribe near the village called the Nayakapos, who look like totally African. And ethnically, they came from the tribal forest belt and settled, whereas we were the plain shepherds, fishing community, cultivators, pot makers, weavers, and so on made the village. But Indian population study, if it is carefully done from ancient to modern, both the idea of race and ethnic and caste as intermixing. Not that caste did not intermix. If you read the book written by Tony Joseph on early Indians, you will see how the entire Indian population today is a mixed population, no doubt. There is no pure Aryan, there is no pure Indo-African, there is no pure Mongoloid. But at the same time, there are ethnic groups. For example, Afghanistan. The clash now is basically ethnic clash within Islam. So not that I do not know that, but the complexity is too much in case like India. So many castes, so many jatis, so many 4 main races one can see even now. So therefore, they need to be studied carefully. And also the group cultural and knowledge and food cultural differences based on their relationship to production is very central. Brahmins say that we are vegetarians. But if they till the land, if they break the stones, or if they go all the time along with the cattle, they can't sustain with vegetarianism. So your food culture, you eat fish, you eat meat, you eat beef, depending on your occupation and profession. The same RSS BJP cannot make soldiers to eat pure vegetarian and survive the China border and fight with Chinese, Himalayan range and so on. So, so therefore, you read a book which is published by Jagannath, my booklet, small book called Anti-National Vegetarianism. How the tribals are not vegetarian, Shudras are not vegetarian, but they are ethnic factors. For example, Jains are an ethnic force now, pure vegetarian. South Indian Brahmins are ethnic force, pure vegetarian. But Eastern Indian Brahmins are fisharians. So these are problems. The Punjab, the Kashmir Brahmins are meat eaters. So these cultural domains have differences, clashes, and food culture is a big clash in India. Social conflicts. When they say India is a vegetarian nation, I get annoyed. 90% people are meatarians. But the Brahmin wrote about India, and Gandhi said India is a vegetarian nation. That is great for India. How can people survive with pure vegetarian? The food basket will be empty if meat goes out. So they have never understood India properly.
Yeah, so there is a question from Loretta Kelleher. So thank you for, first of all, a comment. Thank you for these interesting and stimulating insights. I have a general question. I wonder if the language of decolonialism is accurate, and if not, to what extent it is really useful and appropriate. It is not as if we can even really turn back the clock and undo colonialism. We must strive to include and elevate the marginalized and oppressed in the social reality that has been permanently altered by colonialism. So perhaps we should say recovering from colonialism or something else rather than decolonialism. Please share your thoughts.
Well, this question is being asked everywhere now. Yesterday, I was on a lecture program to the Presidency College faculty and students. They were asking the same question. You are propagating for English. Now, what about the culture of language? and their mother tongue sentiment. And then how can you uproot people? My answer for that was very simple. What was the mother tongue of Brahmins? In Sanskrit. And Shudras were not supposed to learn. Even the Vaishyas were not supposed to learn in the pre-Gupta era in 5th century AD. Now, what is largely mother tongue of Brahmins today? English. Why did they give up Sanskrit? Did not Sanskrit die now? For the death of Sanskrit, how the Shudra, OBC, Dalits are responsible? So, the Telugu people asked me the same question. What about Telugu mother tongue, sentiment, culture? All the rich put their children in English medium. All the state employees, all the teachers put their children in English medium, not in their own schools. So the question is, language. See, there is a prophet in Israel who said, one day, God will lead all the global people to speak one language. Now, he didn't tell what language that would be, but now I can see that it will be English. So, without bothering about sentiments and this colonial discourse, we have been saying very ideologically that given the oppression of Brahmanism against us for 3,000 years, even at the time of the Muslim, the Shudras were not allowed to learn Persian even by the Muslim rulers because the Brahmins told them that these people are not eligible for Persian education. But Persian administration was there till 1853, even when the British were ruling. So we were not allowed the Sanskrit, a national language, to be learned, Persian, a national administration language, to be learned. Now they don't want us to learn English, a national and international language. And they have no qualms about killing their languages. Who killed Pali? Pali was a Buddhist language. Where is it now? So therefore, we have been saying that the British came too late and went back too early so far as Dalit, OBC, Shudra liberation is concerned. So we are not worried about this colonial thesis business. We are not talking about subaltern language, nor we are talking about proletariat or bourgeoisie. We are talking about Shudra, Dalit, Adivasi versus the Dvija. And we are not even worried about the minority issue so much because the Muslims are capable of taking care of themselves. They have a world outside for their religious ideological basis, but we don't have anything outside. So we want English. This colonial thesis we completely disregard. Pule disregarded it, Ambedkar disregarded it, we disregard it. Our main problem is Brahmanism.
Yeah, so yes, so next question is actually from me. So I think I'm on the line, yes. So my question to K Ilaiah is, what is the Dalits level of acceptance of inter-subcaste marriage among the Dalits, or marriage between Dalit and non-Dalit?
Well, this marriage is still a problem, even among the OBCs within OBCs. There are a number of cases when OBC girls married another person outside their own caste, even if they are of the same or slightly lower and higher, there were honor killings. And within Dalits, take for example in Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, the Madigas are lower than the Mala. If a Madiga girl marries a Mala, the Mala parents may oppose. They do oppose. So Ambedkar suggested intercaste marriage as one of the way outs. But my feeling is right now it is not. Because Brahmanism has created food cultural problem. Many Dalit IAS officers got married to Brahmin women and they don't go back to their families now. They have relations with Brahmin families. Many of them became vegetarians along with their wife, and they train their children in that form. So therefore, until the caste issue is deeply talked in the production domain, they take, for example, unless Brahmins, a section of them or 50% of them get into agricultural production, dignity of labor, getting over the theory of production is pollution, and food culture, purity, pollution of nonsensical theory of immense universe. Caste marriages, intercaste marriages will be difficult. Therefore, we are saying the Dalit OBC boys and girls should not be worried about marriage within the university educational domain so much. But sometimes we may have to sacrifice. It is a problem, it is creating the problem, because there is a civil societal arrangement in the village. But in spite of that, there were two ghastly murders in Telangana for a Dalit girl, boy marrying an engineering girl from Vaishya community. The boy was brutally shot dead on the road. And another boy within OBC community, he was hacked by the father-in-law. But yet the intercaste marriages are not stopping. Girls are eloping with boys, sometimes sacrificing the entire material life. Several of them are committing suicide if they are not allowed to marry. So there is a new culture setting up. The love and cinemas have been showing this love marriage for quite a long time in India, even within the caste society. So let us see. I myself say that should not be our priority, but I see a number of girls in my own relative circle, number of girls got married outside. Families did not agree, but they decided to fight with the family and get out of the family. So let us hope that our boys and girls would make a more serious choices based on that. But it is causing lots of violence, I know. So let us see what happens.
I think you're muted.
Yeah, I'm not muted.
No, sorry. I was muted. I'm sorry. Okay, I thank Sri K Ilaiah for this answer. And then there is one more question, which is from Rajesh Barik, where he writes, so how would he see, Sri K Ilaiah would see the rising voting share of OBC for BJP in recent years? In the last UP election, that is in 2017, a large number of OBC people voted for BJP. Even in the last Lok Sabha election, the share of OBC vote for the BJP had increased. So are the OBCs are trying to merge under the umbrella of Hindutva politics?
Well, see, but for the Shudra OBCs, they would not have succeeded in anti-Muslim campaigns, even in the 90s. And but they themselves opposed reservation to the OBCs. Then the OBC Shudra group was divided into reserved group and unreserved group. So BJP took the help of unreserved Shudras, Marathas in Maharashtra, Jats in UP, Haryana, and some section in Bihar. But Bihar, they could not succeed much because there were no unreserved Shudras there. In South, they did not succeed much. But now when Modi came, they studied the caste very carefully, and he declared himself as an OBC Prime Minister. And they divided the most backward and the backward who were in power in UP and Bihar. That's how Yadavs, Kurmis, Jats last time voted en bloc to BJP. But lower OBCs voted to BJP. And they got some power positions. As MLAs, as MPs, they were nominated. Among Dalits also they divided, the Jatals and Chamars. So Mayawati controlled mostly Chamars and high-end Dalits. The lower Dalits were shifted to BJP. So I think with the last election, that division has taken to a logical end. Now they got positions in central government also. OBCs, Dalits, Adivasis constitute 47 ministers now. That is their appeal base. They are getting votes more on caste analysis than on communal thing now. So whereas the Congress does not have the caste analysis carefully, and it lost out on the entire Shudra vote base in South to regional parties, in North to again regional parties, now BJP. So I would say that in this book, we analyze that Shudra support to OBCs, but if the BJP establishes Hindu Rashtra, the Shudras, all of them will be pushed back into medieval ideological frame. Because RSS is for caste system. RSS is not asking the Hindu temple system to appoint Shudras as priests and train them in the Sanskrit schools. Never Mohan Bhagwat or any RSS leader talks about it. The Pitas, the temples, there are Brahmin structures there. So Shudras are understanding, and we are trying to rake up that issue. If you are Hindu, you must. So they have a big problem with Modi now themselves. Modi has laid the foundation stone for Ram Mandir building, which they think is wrong. He is an OBC. The Brahmin people should have done that. So there is a conflict going on there. So Modi seems to be asserting that I am bigger than any Brahmin as Prime Minister. But he would not have become Prime Minister with the Hindu texts. It is Indian Constitution written by Ambedkar. Therefore, he tries to appease to Ambedkar also and all that. So the churning is happening, and the Shudras must realize without priesthood in temple and philosophy, you are nothing in a religion. So we are raising that issue. A lot of scholars have to write. If you are Hindu, you must become priest in temples. And you must lead the ritual knowledge systems. Then you will get any power anywhere. How Brahmins got every power in Delhi? Through ritual status. So this debate is on, let us hope. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm also tired, and then we will.
Sir, there is one last question by Stephen Marks. This is the last question. So what is the potential impact of bringing international pressure on the current government through India's commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals, through commitment to leaving no one behind, which requires equality and non-discrimination across the 17 SDGs? So that is the question.
Well, the commitment to human development goals, after BJP came to power, got terribly weakened. They are not allowing internationally helping NGOs now. They have stopped many of them. And inside they have stopped many NGOs in the name of Christians doing that and converting, and then Muslims never ran educational NGOs or human development NGOs outside their religion. Whereas the Christian networks did it, even Rockefeller, the Green Foundation, and so many other, even human rights organization. Human rights development is part of the Human Development Indicator. So BJP has stopped this fund flow, these training mechanisms, and a lot of unemployment is generated by closing down their accounts, FCRI accounts. But at the same time, BJP is going more and more into private economy by selling out government sectors and moving into the camp of America and Israel more and more. Because there is a huge problem from China, huge problem from Pakistan. So, but a lot of American companies, take for example, the Brahmins, Hindu Brahmins migrate to America as priests with the religious visas. But Americans cannot come to talk about Christianity here. They don't give mission visas. Now there is a mismatch in this. BJP on the one hand wants temples in every country. America allows it, foundation they allow, and temples they allow, Europe allows. But back into India, they don't allow mission visas. So there is a mismatch here. I think unless the Shudras and OBCs take up religion issue, that it is not just Brahmin institution, then you don't call us Hindus. For Muslim issue, we are Hindus. For Christian issue, we are Hindus. But for equality, we are not Hindus. So that problem is coming. And once the BJP in power, the Pandora box is opening up. They are stifling international resources, but creating more unemployment, starvation. With the pandemic, the economy is collapsing. So in this situation, the farmers' agitation, the Shudra OBC demand, and the Dalits are not understanding Shudra OBCs. They think that, this is a diverting identity now. No, without Shudras realizing, becoming anti-caste force, annihilation of caste is impossible. Dalits cannot alone annihilate caste. They are just 18%. Shudras are 52%. So they must be made to realize, please all of you buy this book. It is available on Amazon, just came in February. It is by Pengyun. You will get many of the answers in this book. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sri K Ilaiah ji. And you prefer to call spade a spade, so that is your frankness of your talk, which makes it always interesting. And I also thank Professor Jeffrey Utso for kindly agreeing to chair the session and giving the initial remark. I now request him to give the closing remarks before we close the session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that was an excellent session. Many issues. I think the issue of what happens to kind of the Shudra and the backward caste movement going forward is essential. The legacy of Mondal, myself. I think it's worrying that this increased vote for the BJP. But I think we've, many of the answers. I think we've discussed, and I thank Sri Kancha Ilaiah for so many interesting remarks, and I learned a lot. So thanks everyone for attending.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I just want to make one last point that on the 25th, we have a roundtable where Sri Kancha Ilaiah will participate along with other scholars across the world on discussion on the same point. So basically we are having 3 different sessions as keynote like this one, and then the 3 keynote speakers come together on the 25th at the same time for a roundtable. So that's the information I want to give. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.